Hey everybody, I am John Barker, and in this episode of Here to Record Show and Tell, we're going to take a look at the brand new ATEM Mini Extreme from Blackmagic Design. This brand new model has 8 HDMI inputs, 2 HDMI outputs and 2 USB outputs, amongst a lot of other new features. Over the next 2 weeks, I'll be posting lots more videos on this device, things like SuperSource, keyfill graphics, HDMI output configurations and loads more, so be sure to be subscribed to see all those videos when they're posted. And before we continue, I just want to let you know I have bought this with my own money, and all the views and opinions are my own. As you probably know, the ATEM Mini, the Pro and the ISO have become crazy popular over the last year, and they allow for multiple camera inputs, webcam, SSD recording, streaming and ISO recording on the ISO model. And now the ATEM Mini Extreme and the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO ticks lots more boxes, which lets you use these devices in much bigger productions and can really scale up to larger use cases. As we take a look around the device, you can see all the inputs and outputs are on the back as expected. We finally have a headphone connection, 2 microphone inputs, 8 HDMI inputs, all with built-in scalers as expected, 2 HDMI outputs, both fully configurable, and 2 USB outputs next to that. Then you have a network connection and power. You'll also notice on the back there's a new big vent for really getting that air out of the device. And then on the top we have all the buttons. You have audio control, camera control for all 8 inputs, picture-in-picture effects, macro buttons, transition options, key controls, record and stream buttons, and then video out buttons. So how does it work? Well, it works pretty similar to all the rest of the ATEM Minis in the lineup. It can be controlled via USB-C directly to a computer or via your local network when connected to a router or a switch. I have mine connected to a network switch here in the house, and I can open up the ATEM software control, the connection panel, and I can see it in there just like any other ATEM. And from there I can connect a HDMI cable to the HDMI output and then connect up a monitor. But in my case I'm connecting it to an ATEM Mini so I can record this video. So I am showing multi-view on my HDMI output right now, but of course I can switch between any of the individual inputs or multi-view itself. Having those 2 HDMI outputs really does help with this ATEM Mini Extreme in many different use cases. So I can send one HDMI to a multi-view right up in front of me, and then another HDMI off to a recorder and really capture a nice clean feed of how things look during the production. And while doing all of that, I can still connect 2 USB devices. One, maybe a webcam into Zoom for a meeting, and then another SSD so I can record the program feed onto a local SSD for editing pretty soon after the event ends. Like I said already, there's a lot to unpack here, and more videos will come soon on use cases for 2 HDMI outputs and 2 USB outputs, so stick around for those. Speaking of upcoming videos, I have one coming out pretty soon on SuperSource, but I did want to touch on it in this video because it's a really powerful feature to have in an ATEM of this size. SuperSource allows you to create pretty complex layouts that are very useful whenever you want to create a panel style discussion with your live stream guests, or maybe show a couple of presenters and their presentation at the same time. While you could achieve this, and I showed that off in my previous ATEM Mini picture-in-picture videos, you could chain a couple together and get a similar effect, but this is much easier and much more usable in the long term. The quickest way to pull up SuperSource is with the dedicated button on the ATEM Mini Extreme, and you can just about see it there off to the right of all the main sources. Pressing this and bringing it on air will show whatever layout you have stored right now. Here's the one I have set up in the ATEM Mini Extreme. But over in the ATEM software control, you'll want to go through maybe some of the default layouts to see how they look. And of course, you'll want to use all the settings below that to make it look exactly the way you want it to look. Like I said already, there's way too much to cover in this one video, so stick around for a SuperSource dedicated video coming very soon. But needless to say, I'm pretty excited to use this during a live stream or during videos like this to just bring up a few sources really fast into my production. This row of buttons in the top center is the select bus, and it has a pretty nice use case. The top rows are all the sources or inputs, so 1 through 8, and then your media players, colors, and bars. And the bottom row is your destinations, or could be considered your outputs. Since the ATEM Mini Extreme can do so many different things, you might want to be able to repatch some of your inputs to destinations during a production, and I'll show you how that works right now. So previously on an ATEM Mini, if you wanted to select a source for your downstream keyer, you would use the ATEM software control over on the palette section here, choose downstream key, and then you would select a fill source right here. But now you can do all of that on the device itself, And something to note is you press the destination first and then you press the source second. So bottom row pressed first and then the top row is second. It can seem a little bit backwards at first, but it'll make sense. So on the ATEM Mini Extreme, I'll press the DSK1 button in the destinations row and then choose source 8 to send that source to the DSK1. And now back over in my ATEM software control, you can see the fill source is now camera 8 since I pressed that button on the select bus. And yes, there is a video coming out very soon on the select bus specifically. So a few final things to explore in this initial impressions video. Number one is the macro buttons built right into the device. It's really nice to see 6 buttons right on the device itself so you can press them during a production really quickly. You will have to remember which macros you programmed to these buttons though, since there's just numbers on there. So maybe it's good to keep a Stream Deck and Companion nearby. Camera control is something that's really nice to have for all 8 inputs on the device. I don't really have any Blackmagic cameras here in the studio just yet, but it's something I'm working on getting in, testing, and then making a specific video about. Another nice thing is the headphones output. That's something that's kind of been needed for the longest time, and now it's finally here, and you can use it to listen to your stream before you send it off to the world, or during your production just to make sure everything sounds as it should. So super nice to have. And lots more things like new multi-view layouts, 4 upstream keyers, 2 downstream keyers, 2 DVEs, and more that I can even discuss in this initial video. For the pros of this device, I really like all the new inputs and of course the new output options. Many times I ran into the issue where I wanted to webcam and also record to SSD at the same time. So being able to do those things is just going to really help me in terms of certain productions. Another pro is all the buttons on the top. The select bus in particular is something that's really needed for this many operations in one device, and I think that'll be really nice to use over time. And finally, having SuperSource built right in means that I can use this for so many different use cases, whether it's side-by-side interview mode, panel discussions, or whatever kind of gigs come my way. In terms of the cons, there's possibly too many little buttons on this device. I can see myself really looking down and finding all the buttons and maybe getting lost or accidentally pressing the wrong one. It's a small little con, and maybe it's not much of a con, but they've definitely packed a lot of buttons, especially all the camera control ones, right into the device itself. I would love to have seen a different approach to the audio inputs instead of the small headphone style 3.5mm mic inputs. It would have been nice to see some maybe mini XLRs or something along those lines. That's something a lot of people have been really pushing for and hoping for, but it didn't make it into this ATEM Mini Extreme line. And the final con, or something I'm a little bit worried about in the long term, is how loud it might be. The fan sound whenever you start it up or when you're updating can get pretty loud. So far during operation, while I've been making this video, it's stayed nice and quiet, but if it gets hot in here, the fan does really kick in and maybe it'll get loud, but that's something I'll get back to in a future video if I find that to become an issue. And that just leaves the price, which is one of the biggest kind of surprises for the announcement of this device. I was thinking it would cost at least double of what it ended up costing, just under $1,000 or so, which is a really good deal for as many features built into this. Things like SuperSource were only available on bigger ATEM 1MEs, 2MEs before, and they've come down into this under $1,000 device, which is really nice for the price. I would say, of course, if you're going to think about buying an ATEM Mini right now, or the original 3 models, it would be worth considering this one, because it might be something you really need to use over time. And I did find very fast that the ATEM Mini and the ATEM Mini Pro, I just filled up all the inputs really fast. So to have this with the new HDMI outputs and the 2 USB outputs is a lot of stuff to have in one device for this one price. So thanks for watching. I do hope you found this useful. I'll be posting lots more videos on the ATEM Mini Extreme, and maybe some of them have come out already since you watched this. So check the description below this video. And otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.